Well, the long-anticipated premiere of Stranger Things Season 4 has arrived, but is it more of what I loved, or has it changed and grown up while it was away? Stick around and I will share my thoughts. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Stranger Things Season 4, Episode 1. The synopsis on IMDb reads, "Still reeling from the events last year, the gang tries to move on with their lives. However, a threat is brewing both on Earth and the Upside Down." All right, it's an interesting shift in tone, I think. It's been a little while since I watched the previous season, so I'm not sure. It starts and ends with impactful scenes of sci-fi horror, but the bulk of the content is spent reestablishing what's happening in the lives of the ensemble cast. In fact, given its nearly 1 hour and 20-minute runtime, I think it's actually closer to 1 hour, 18 minutes, I thought it spent way too much time on kind of ultimately trivial things to me. It's like I said, it's been a while since I watched the other seasons, but the tone seems to have shifted to that of a high school teen comedy drama. Now, I am fine with a story about kids, as the previous seasons have been, and about teenagers as they've been slowly shifting into that age demographic. I'm fine with stories about characters in those age groups, but I usually dislike stories made for those audiences. And I didn't particularly feel like previous seasons were made for those audiences. You had adult characters and other situations and a tone that seemed broader and interested in connecting with a larger number of age, or wider range of ages in the audience. This seems, I don't know if it's trying to evoke 80s teen comedy dramas or whatever, or maybe more modern ones, I don't know, but it seems to be, it just has a lighter tone. You've got bullying scenarios, for example, that play out in what I think is unrealistic fashion, which is common in teen movies, where like the teacher is just standing there saying nothing while a student is allowed to say some mocking things. I mean, like, oh my gosh. I mean, between my own experiences with the school and back in the day when I was substitute teaching, you see a tone like that, an attitude, a bullying attitude in the classroom when you are just standing there. You don't give the bullying student a platform to just continue on. I could see where those sentences were going. I'd be like, whatever her name is, we'll say Jessica. Jessica, no, we're not going to go there. You guys need to settle down and be that's unacceptable. I would even send the student out of the room, taking the kind of attitude that this student was taking. And that's just one situation. There were several that I'm like, this just feels like a teen movie, When I see those kinds of tropes playing out, in addition to there being also a heavy focus on teen dating relationship drama, when I see those kinds of tropes playing out, they read to me as unrealistic tropes. And I disconnect from the story and start thinking of it on a meta level, thinking, oh, it's being like a teen movie, I'm not truly feeling involved in the story. And so this pilot really had me disconnected in a way that I don't remember any previous episodes of this series making me feel. Meanwhile, the core sci-fi mystery of the series is virtually unmentioned through most of the episode, apart from, as I said, the beginning and the end. I like character-driven stories, but generous time, I think overly generous time, is given to things like a D&D game and hobby. And I'm a big tabletop RPG nerd, but I felt like they were just they could have shortened up the cuts. They could have just trimmed down the scene, not remove these things altogether. That's not what I'm talking about, but you can use shorter cuts to communicate these situations and these status quos that they're setting up. This championship basketball game, likewise, was given more time than I thought it needed. Things could have been presented in far less time and still establish the plot points, the relationship dynamics that I think that they're feeling are important to establish. Now, from what I understand, the 7 episodes released so far on Netflix are only the first half of Season 4, while previous seasons were only 8 or 9 episodes, so not much more at all than just presumably this half of a season we've been given. This, combined with the pacing and length of this episode, has me suspecting that this season's going to feel slower with more fat on the bones than what I would really like. As far as the cast goes, returning cast members I feel like are all solid. This can be an awkward transition for child actors who can have a dynamic and a performance style that works for them when they're playing kids, but then something about their skill maybe doesn't mature along with their bodies as they're growing older, and audiences kind of, I think, expect more realism and more depth in adult performers. But I felt like this was a solid cast of child actors to begin with a couple of standouts even, and they all still do well with what the script requires of them. It's really going to depend, I think, on what the script requires of them in terms of performance. But so far, so good. In general, though, the tone does feel lighter and more comedic, and so there aren't as many opportunities as I would like for these actors to deliver the kind of grounded and realistic performances I prefer and kind of show us what they have in that regard. As far as stunts and visuals go, visual effects continue to be at the level that this series is known for, and which is a very good one, I think. The world and creature designs associated with the Upside Down look to be leaning maybe even more into the creepy and horrific. So maybe the show is kind of growing up in that way too. I think I heard that they're this season taking inspiration from Hellraiser, which I think would be interesting to see what they do with that. Stranger Things always delivers on this front for me, and this episode was not a deviation from that, even if the percentage given to those moments was way less than I want. Now, let's talk about themes. Is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? There's a brief moment played for comedy that I think might stand out to some Christians, where there's a Christian girl that says that she will repent later just before she resolves to sin by changing school records for a friend. And I think that that's a temptation, even though it's played as a joke here. It's a temptation that many Christians, certainly myself, can relate to, and that God honestly opens himself up and in a sense makes himself vulnerable to when his grace and forgiveness are so freely and tirelessly given. But the joke neglects to represent the harm that we do to ourselves, as our own thoughts in those moments neglect to think about the harm that we do to ourselves and to our lives as we take that selfish and light view of God's forgiveness. But really, that was just a really quick, light moment. The thing that had me thinking on a deeper level was, after watching this, just thinking about how we sadly try to find our identity in romantic relationships, the fulfillment of our lives in whether or not we find that special someone that we're going to live the rest of our lives with, and that somehow our lives will be less full if we are not in that kind of a relationship. We see that kind of emphasis as being a key part of the fulfillment of lives in all kinds of fictional stories. And there is, for my preferences here, again, as in many other places, an overemphasis on each character coupling up, or a sadness for them that we are meant to feel as audience members if they do not couple up at some point. Now, this isn't surprising. As I said, it's all over the place in entertainment and fiction, has been for years, but it's a bit sad to see identity and happiness so tied to whether or not someone is in a romantic relationship. Even in the church, we can overemphasize coupling and feel like we need to help our single friends find someone so that they can have a fulfilled life, or what we've discovered in our relationships to be very fulfilling. But Jesus remained single and also lived the most fulfilled and meaningful life in history. Jesus also affirmed in his teaching that it's better for some not to ever marry. You can look at Matthew 19 for that. The Apostle Paul honored and even advocated for singleness in 1 Corinthians 7. And the prophet Isaiah revealed God's heart for those who live their lives for him and remain single at the same time in Isaiah 56:5. Speaking for God there, he promises for them, I will give in my house and within my walls a monument and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. So I think especially in this time period that we're living in, where the concept of having a sexual identity is so important to so many, that we not contribute to that as Christians by inadvertently thinking and communicating that a life lived single is by nature a life less fulfilled. All right, now I have no idea what your tastes are in TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, well, listen, you're invested in this show at this point. You're gonna watch this, but sadly, until it makes some change to focus, tone, and pacing, which, fingers crossed, maybe a lot will happen in the second episode. But until that happens, this is now a second screen experience for you. Play a game that you can pause for the parts you want to give your full attention to, the parts that advance the story that you care about and have the sci-fi horror moments that you think are really cool. You want that. You do not want to miss out on that. But apart from those things, there seems right now to be a lot of filler and less killer than you want through a ton of this episode. Hopefully that will not be the case for the whole season. This one is rated TV-14 for fear, language, disturbing images, gore, and smoking. And those are all my thoughts for now on Stranger Things Season 4, Episode 1. As always, I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, and click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. As a reminder, one of the newest benefits is at the $1 tier, you can get my new audio drama and adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's From Beyond, just at the $1 tier. All of that at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all Christian Geek Central content at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Summer insanity.
Liberate butter.